represents a little bit of a change for Researcher Revealed podcast. Up until to now, I have only had on non-medic researchers. But when I had my conversation with Abigail and she was telling me about some of Elliot's research and how he's doing stuff, the importance of what he's doing and the massive gaps that it's filling in our understanding around men's health, around research in men's health, it felt like too much of a good opportunity to pass by. And so I reached back out to Elliot and asked him to come on as a guest to discuss this technology. So rather than about his journey into research, like a lot of episodes, this is much more about the device that he has developed and the research around that device and how that research is changing how people, urologists and doctors all around the world are thinking about men's health, their sexual performance, and how it can indicate, very importantly, their greater cardiovascular health and how that can, be life-changing for those individuals. Hello, and welcome to Researcher Revealed. This is a new type of episode that we're going to trial over the next year to see how everybody out there who's listening or watching enjoys it. And what we'd like to do in this episode is we're going to shine a spotlight onto a specific new digital health technology that's been developed in the last 5 to 10 years, or maybe a little bit longer, and find out a little bit more about the person who's spearheading that technology, the research that's being done around that technology, all of those sorts of things. So with no further ado, I'd like to welcome Justin Elliot. Sorry, other way around. I hate people's names who've got like two first names is so
Mom,
confusing.
you did this to me.
Sorry, I'd like to welcome Elliot Justin to the podcast. Elliot, can you introduce yourself to everybody?
Sure. I am the CEO of FirmTech and the inventor of the TechRing, the world's first monitor of the health of the penis. We live in this incredible age of healthcare wearables, smartwatches, smart rings, smart everything. But there's an obvious gap, and that is sex. And it's really, and I don't know, it's kind of bizarre that we find that no one else has done what we're doing before because the technology has been around since the 1990s. And as a doctor, if it's kind of obvious this is a gap that needs to be filled, because if someone has a problem with their heart, their lung, their kidney, their bowels, I can get imaging tests and blood tests that will tell me relatively objectively what's going on. But when it comes to the health of the penis and the clitoris, everyone's two favorite organs that they need to admit there are their favorite organs. There's nothing, and it's so. And I got into this in a very, very peculiar way as well too.
Oh, now you've got me intrigued. Tell us a little bit, very, very briefly, what inspired you to start FirmTech? What was the sort of thing that got you into it?
Well, I live in Montana, and I own horses, and my wife says I ride like a 12-year-old. I'd say I'm a little bit more mature than that. I think I ride like at least like a 25-year-old. But several years ago, I was riding in. Oh wait, keep quiet. I was riding in Paradise Valley. I don't want people to know about it because it's really, really beautiful. Because Paradise is actually the next valley over from where I live. Anyway, I was riding in Paradise Valley, and it was a beautiful day, and I was moving along quite fast. And I was looking off to my right, came around a left turn in the trail, and some do-gooder had cut a tree that had fallen over the trail so you could walk underneath it, but you couldn't ride underneath it. So it was like jousting without armor. I took that tree on my chest and broke 6 ribs and 6 vertebrae. And fortunately, I did not have a spinal cord injury, but it got me interested in what's been done to rehabilitate sexual function in men and women who have spinal cord injury. And so there were 6 papers in the published literature, peer-reviewed literature, saying they're able to rehabilitate sexual function with neuromodulation. So neuromodulation that most people are familiar with is cardiac pacemaking. We put an electrode in the right atrium of the heart. We have a battery pack. We can make the heart work even when someone's dead. So imagine having the ability to do that with human sexuality would be extremely powerful, especially in an aging population. So I decided to try that out on 2 rams, 2 male sheep.
Okay.
And we got erection and ejaculation, weak erection, but we also got urination and defecation, so it wasn't exactly bedroom friendly, unless of course you live maybe in some part of London or Sydney or New York City. So it wasn't it was problematic. So I
Yeah.
decided to pursue this a little bit further though. So instead of going out and raising $10, $12 million and going down to I don't know, Nigeria or Brazil and testing it on 25 men with erectile dysfunction, I said I'm gonna do it. I'll try it on myself. So I had a friend of mine who's a urologist implant an electrode by my pudendal and cavernous nerves. Everyone's two favorite nerves that no one's ever heard of or talks about. The nerves that come out from under the pubic bone in men and women, the same.
Yeah.
And the nerves are involved with arousal and climax. Uh, I felt nothing. We tried all amplitudes and frequencies, and I felt nothing. Now, I'm only an N of one, but I thought, this is probably yet another example where the medical literature just turns out to be literature. I think one of the things everyone listening to this should have learned from COVID. If you haven't learned it, I'm going to repeat it, which is that it's kind of odd that medicine, we talk about the medical literature because literature is mostly fiction. And most of the medical research is not reproducible. A lot of it is just done to seek grants. I mean, I don't think these 6 papers by 3 different authors, Egyptian, Taiwanese, United States, were all in prestigious journals, all peer reviewed. And yet it didn't work with me, and I suspect it's
Yeah.
not going to work with anyone. Anyway, it's really interesting because I don't think we actually understand arousal and climax, the neurophysiology of it in people yet. We pretend that we do in textbooks, but I don't think we actually understand it. But that's how I got involved in this. I call it Project O for
Okay.
obvious reasons. I couldn't get it published because negative studies almost never get published,
Yeah.
especially negative studies by people who are not involved, who are not significant academics, and I'm
Yeah.
not. So several years later, a urologist, I'm by background an emergency medicine doctor, and I have done research in the distant past. And I'd become, it's 10 years ago in my career, reached a point where I was a consultant in between the doctor with the idea, the engineers who are building it, and the businessmen who don't want to lose money but want to make money, and trying to pull because I'd done all 3 roles. And a urology professor at the University of Utah had been working for like a decade on trying to count the number of nocturnal erections that men have because they're a leading indicator, like at that moment, of the cardiovascular health. He heard about me from another doctor who was working on the project, and he said he wanted to work with me, and he told me about this fact about nocturnal erections, and I said, "Really? I'd never heard of that." I was on. We all. I mean, in the United States we call it morning wood. They call it something weird in Australia, but in the United States we call it morning wood, and we know about it and we laugh about it. And a lot of doctors think, well, that's enough. If you have morning wood, you're okay. But actually, 1 erection is not enough overnight. A healthy man will have 3 to 5 nocturnal erections of a certain duration and firmness. And if that number goes down significantly being 50% or greater, like, so for example, I had 4 nocturnal erections and went down to 2, and my nocturnal erections went down from, say, 35 minutes duration to 15 minutes duration, I have 50% chance of having a cardiovascular event in the next 2 or 3 years. So that's when he told me this, explained this to me. Instead, I was excited because this would be like a 6th vital sign. And what do
Yeah.
men care more about? Some fluctuation in their blood pressure, or the fact that they only took 8,000 steps yesterday, or their their erections. And the
Yeah.
answer is obvious. That's mentally, a man is only good as his last 2 or 3 erections. If they haven't been good, he probably should not be allowed to do anything significant because he's not mentally well. So
Hmm.
uh, this doctor at the University of Utah is what I call a cock ring virgin. Uh,
Okay.
I am not. So I prefer to call them erection rings because you know, we call them cock rings, and they puts it in sort of the realm of a sex toy novelty thing you get for, $10, $15 you get, and you use it a few times and you throw it out. I call them erection rings because I want people to understand it. That's what it's doing. It will sustain an
Yeah.
erection. It's just not some novelty for Valentine's Day or for gay guys or guys who have who have fetishes. And any more than vibrators is just a toy either. They're not. They're actually performing an important function. So that's that's the background. So this doctor wanted me to get involved in this project. Uh, I Because he was a cock ring virgin, he wasn't thinking about what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
His idea for a form was a condom ring, embedding
Okay.
sensors into a condom ring, and he was worried about strangulation. The engineer that he was working with were worried about the strangulation effect if it was worn
Yeah.
overnight. And after about a month, I said, if one, condom rings break, so you're putting sensors into something that can tear easily.
Yeah.
Two, there's no warning on a condom box that says you're going to fall off if you leave it on overnight. Excuse the language, but there's nothing. You don't have to worry about strangulation effect. You've wasted,
Yeah.
and you've wasted a lot of money to build something that had 8 times the stretch of a condom ring when that's not a problem. And they'd also spent a lot of money trying to secure patents in this area that they thought would bar anyone from competing with them. So I I pointed out that the condom ring will break. The sensors, you don't have to worry about strangulation effect, and actually you can't get it. We have patents, but they're not the patents in this area are weak. And why is that? They just in America especially, where we're so litigious, people are really concerned about getting patents. And if the idea for your patent is in the public domain, the idea being that there is research that shows that nocturnal erections are an indicator of cardiovascular health, and the form that you're using has already a ring has already been put on the penis before. You can patent away, you can paper with patents, but they're not defensible because there's nothing particularly proprietary about them. We have patents too, but the value of our patents is in our soft our interpretation of the data, the amount of data
Yeah.
we have. So
Yeah.
they these guys fired me, and I'd never been fired before. So I turned around and said, well, in that case, I want to buy the company. I want to buy it because I couldn't. I had an agreement with them. I was a consultant with them. I had a non-disclosure agreement, and they own my ideas basically. And now that doctor works for me, and I've taken this. We're out about 3.5 years right now, and we have filled the gap. We've documented close to 140,000 erections on over 3,000 men. We have sold, I don't know, 25,000 products. And we must have, I don't know, 8 or 9 published papers and more papers on the way. And these aren't papers that almost all these papers are being done independently of
Mm.
us because I'm not big pharma. I don't have the money to spend to work in that way. But I do have connections, and I have there's something charismatic, if you will, about what we're doing because people are really interested in human sexuality.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned to you earlier, I basically most of the research has been as we say in America, Tom Sawyered. So people have read Tom Sawyer, there's a famous scene where his parents want him to paint a fence because he's been naughty. He wants to go fishing with Polly, as I recall. So he just persuades charms other people to paint the fence, and that's to a large degree what we've done with this research. The
It,
fence is
it's
being painted by others.
it's such a fascinating idea, and before we dive into it a little bit deeper, I just want to go over the actual device that FirmTech have now created and are doing all this research on. So it's a combination of both a wearable, so like a watch that collects a certain amount of data, but it
Yes.
also aids in sexual performance enhancement, correct?
Correct. I really,
Okay.
I got into this for the data,
Mm-hmm.
but in order to come up with, basically, there's a sensor here
Mm-hmm.
and a sensor here, and as the penis expands in girth, it pushes on one sensor and pulls on the other sensor
Yeah.
and gives the computer 2 data points that the computer interprets into a 1/10 scale of firmness. But I got into it for the data, but then realized that I had solved the cock ring problem. So what is that problem? The problem is that these rings are made the same way for 150 years. They're made out of silicone. They're an O-ring essentially, a gasket, if you will. They pinch. They're uncomfortable. Uh, they can't be worn. They cut the circulation. A man has to have an erection before it will really work effectively because it's blocking the flow of blood into the penis. Uh, and they're uncomfortable. They're really uncomfortable. I mean, I play around with them for years. So unlike this doctor who I spoke with, I called it as a cock ring virgin. He'd never used one, even though he's a urologist. I'm fortunate to be married to someone who's into sex toys. By the way, if there are any men listening to this show and you think about getting married, being into sex toys is really important. If you want to marry, that needs to be on your list of qualities that you want. More important than looks. That's more important than lots of things because marriage goes on for a long time. Anyway, my wife would probably like 2 or 3 times he would buy one of these, a lasso or a ring, and supposedly it was new or better, and we'd throw it out because they don't work all that well and they're uncomfortable. And in men who have compromised circulation, but men with diabetes or hypertension, they can actually be dangerous. And sometimes they can get stuck on if guys are doing drugs or drinking and they fall asleep with them on. So in order to counter erections overnight, we had to make our ring out of a different material. So our ring's not made of silicone, made out of elastomer. Elastomer is a much more forgiving material than silicone. Silicone is stiff and irritating to the skin. Women are familiar with this because women wear bras. I would say probably, I would just guess that half of the sex in heterosexual couples and committed relationships starts when a guy is scratching his wife's or girlfriend's back at night when the bra comes off, because the bra is irritating to the back because it pulls on the skin. Elastomers adapt to us. They still can be a little bit irritating, but they're not as irritating as silicone. So I was challenged by this doctor with coming up with a way of coming up with a ring that could be worn overnight. And I was scratching my wife's back. On her desk there was a stress ball, and I thought, duh, stress ball's made out of elastomer. It's not made out of silicone. Let's make an erection ring out of elastomer. And then I noticed a bra on the floor, and I said, duh, a bra is a ring that opens and closes. It's not put on over the head, opens and closes with a hook,
clasp. Yeah.
a clasp. I thought, why don't we start making rings, erection rings, with hook? Matter of fact, I don't know why they hasn't been done. Again, people tell me, oh, you're a genius. I'm not a genius. I was challenged by a doctor, by this other guy. I was challenged by this problem. How do I come up with something that it will be easy on, easy off? And the solution was right in front of me, because the bra is relatively recent invention as well too. The bra is I'm going back to probably early 1900s is when the bra became an item. Before then, women were binding themselves, and they had ties, and it was hard. So if you need someone else, a servant behind you to do it, or if you were poor, a poor person, you tied in front. The hook has been around since. There are examples of hooks using bone from pre-Columbian, from caveman times, and yet no one thought, let's come up with something for women. It boggles the mind how it's kind of like suit. Go ahead.
I think it goes back to what you were saying, it's that being in that right place at the right time, having that accident that then started making your brain think about things, that you started seeing things that are relatively ordinary and finding ways to repurpose them in order to have multiple benefits. With this new invention of your FirmTech penile ring that is both a wearable, so it can do that really key identification for men's health of counting nocturnal erections, that then can go on and identify early risk for cardiovascular health issues, up to actually also aiding with sexual performance.
Right.
And so I think sometimes it takes a lot of hard work. So if you think about like a pill that's being created, it takes lots of iterations and testing and modeling and whatnot before you get to something that's safe and does something. And sometimes I think actually the simplest solutions might actually be staring you in the face. And it's just about having that openness and that creativity to be like, hey, what if we were to use this stress ball material, a bra clasp, put them together, add a sensor, and see what happens?
Yeah. my, I'd say about I'm in my wife is in this business with me, and by background she's a really talented painter, landscape painter, portrait painter. I've done 7 startups. This is my 7th business. I've had 4 exits. This is the first time she ever wanted to be in the business, and why is that? Because being at the being at the leading edge of sexual health and getting to talk about sex and health all the time is so much fun. So, uh, anyway, she looks at me and said, "It had, it had to be you. It had to be a doctor
Yeah.
who was familiar with research, who had started businesses, who could think in practical terms, but also was really interested in sex and it had familiarity with cock rings basically, in order to figure out the form. The sensors have been the sensors I inherited from the guys that I took over the business from. 2 sensors using a pressure sensor and a strain gauge, uh, and they work. But I now know better ones, and
Mm.
it's interesting. I mean, we know what we know, and our experts know what they know, but we all of us have really limited knowledge. And I was fortunate. Again, so many things happen by chance. Our second son lives in Stockholm, and our general counsel was having a destination wedding. Americans do this near Parma in Italy, and it's like this is 2 years ago, and I wanted to visit. I want to. I knew I was going to be going from Stockholm to Parma, but was there going on? Were there any meetings going on in between in that time period, so I could at least write it off half the trip? So and there was the sex tech was being held going on in Berlin. So we went there, and I spoke about our technology. But sex tech in Berlin is it's really more focused on 2 things. One is bringing uh, technology to sex work,
Hmm.
how to make sex work safer and
Safer.
more, and the other word, more profitable, obviously. But the other word would be also be more efficient. How could people, how can kinky people get hooked up with the right people, whether they're professionals or non-professionals?
Yeah.
That was a major focus. The other part of it was a little bit was on haptics, which really interested me. So the problems with haptics are feelies, and like in Brave New World, where we actually, or in the Woody Allen movie, everything you want to know about sex with the orb. We have to, and this is coming. This is inevitable, and I don't think we're really prepared as a civilization, as humans, to deal with uh, the fact that people talk about robots. You don't if it's all in your head, you don't even need robots. So you just need to be in touch, with
Yeah.
something, and that's going to happen. So it happens certainly in your lifetime, Rosalind, if not
Mm.
mine. Anyway, there was a German, Swiss American engineer familiar with haptics. Interested in this area. I think he came to looking for some a kinky partner. He's now my CTO. Uh, so, we have a booth after we spoke. Next to us, there's someone selling dungeon cages, and the other side of us, someone is selling, latex suits of some various sorts. And there we are. We have the scientific product that interested him. He's working at the Fraunhofer Institute in Berlin, and he led us to a woman who is perhaps certainly the EU's leading engineer in sensor technology, and she's given us. That was 2 years ago. She's given
Hmm.
us other ideas for other sensors to use that will make the device more sensitive, more specific, yield a broader range of information, and we will be launching that product next
Mm.
year.
Very
And
exciting.
if we hadn't gone to Sex Tech in Berlin,
You wouldn't do that. Yeah.
we wouldn't be doing it.
But
Yeah.
I think a couple of things that you said, is really important, I think, for people out there to actually recognize. And I think people like yourselves, people like me who've done research, we have a much better idea of actually how like Swiss cheese our medical literature or evidence base is. And I think, you know, your trajectory and what you've done with FirmTech is really interesting because I think this digital health revolution, as some people are calling it, that's currently like at the forefront of everybody's minds with like AI and wearables and remote patient monitoring and all of these sorts of devices. I don't think there's that established pathway of how to make things happen. So you kind of get people who are clinicians who want to use the tech or develop the tech, and they do their best to do it, but they may not have that tech experience. And then you have tech people who know how to build those sensors, build an app, build whatever, but they don't understand the healthcare system in order to make stuff happen. And I think listening to you talk and doing some reading that I did behind the scenes, I think your sort of model of what you've done with FirmTech is a really interesting one, because you yourself have generated, had founded this idea, but rather than you trying to do it all independently, you've Tom Sawyered it. And I love that. Like, it's such a brilliant idea. You Tom Sawyered it. So you've got, partners all over the world who you're giving the device to and asking them to do research, and then they publish the research. And all the time that they're doing that, it's adding more and more real evidence, not just to that literature, the evidence base, but also to the product, to our understanding around men's sexual health, to understanding sensors, wearables, devices, all of that sort of stuff. So I think I'm really excited that you were able to come on and share a little bit of that, like, possible new model of how do we get the evidence out there in a rapid and usable way for these new digital techs without having the money of a pharma company.
Yeah, well, the money in the company is frankly is largely my money. I can't raise money in this area. That kind of takes me back as well too, because um, one, we're not. It's easy. It's easier to. I have raised money before. It's easier to raise money if you're a Me Too list, and when we have no real competition in the world other than one company in the UK called Atom, and their device works, but it has less functionality than our device, and so we can't raise money, and so it's without money you can't progress. Fortunately, I have money. I have some money from previous companies that I started, so that's given me an advantage. But there are we have been able to go to leading andrologists, urologists around the world and get them to use our product. They're excited about. These are really progressive people. They're excited to finally have a way of making what they're doing objective. So
Yeah.
let's. So first, I guess I'd like to talk a little bit about the cardiovascular aspect of it.
Yes, please.
So what leading indicator means, it's predictive. In medicine, we treat associations. So high blood pressure is associated with stroke, but it's not predictive. Uh, Elevated lipoproteins is associated with atherosclerosis, but it's not predictive. But as I said before, nocturnal erections are predictive. So, we have had 3 men utilizing our device get cardiac catheterizations that I'm aware of. That's because they contacted me to tell me, wow, I was blaming two of these 3. I was blaming my sexual problems on my wife, and now I
Yeah.
had, it was me. I had a
Huh.
cardiovascular issue. Um, there are 2
So,
papers.
so just slow
Good.
down 2 seconds, slow down. I think we need to take a minute just to highlight that. So these 3, we'll call them case studies, because like you said, N of ones independently,
Right.
but these 3 individuals who were involved in some form of a research study around your FirmTech device, your penile
No
ring.
research. No, these are
Oh,
customers.
they were just
Th-
users.
These are men. These are men whose wives. Women are more interested in health in general than men are. The wives thought, hey, the problem is not that I'm overweight or I don't know how to give good head or whatever. The problem is it's you. You're out of shape. And I've heard about this device online. They bought the device
Yeah.
for their two or three husbands or their one's boyfriend. And it turned out, well, lo and behold, the problem was a cardiovascular problem.
Okay.
And all 3 of these couples were in therapy, because one of the things one of the mistakes that therapists make It's like they want to stay in their lane. The doctors and therapists, they don't communicate with each other. The therapists want, people know what they know. So what do the
Yeah.
doctors know? All the doctors know is give them an erection pill, give them Viagra, or
Yeah.
give them Cialis. That's what doctors know. It's pretty stupid, by the
Yeah.
way. And the average doctor spends 7 minutes with a patient. There's no
Yep.
time to actually ask,
No.
when how often a week are you initiating sex? When do you lose your erections? Is it alcohol? Is it this, that? It takes about 20 or 30 minutes really to take a good history of a
Yeah.
sexual history alone. And doctors don't want to spend the time doing it. It's, hey, take this pill or go online, or men just go online and get a pill.
Yeah.
And the pills can, if take just take getting a pill, that can mask a problem. I have no problem with a guy who's 25 who's dating online and has confidence issues because he's seeing someone new every week. Um,
Yeah.
I get it. Okay, and the pills give you more confidence. The pills put a little more blood in your penis. Great. Go online, get a pill. But if you're 40 or 50 years of age, and I've had men now in their late 30s who are low T. If you're just going to take a pill, you could be masking a significant problem, and I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
And I do think the pills are being given out too liberally, because here in the United States, you can go to Hims or Row, or there are a dozen online, and there's a questionnaire, and that questionnaire is going to drive you to make a purchase. Just so, hey,
Yeah.
even if you're going to go online to a site to buy buy a camera, the questionnaire drives you to buy the camera.
Yeah.
So if a guy wants to optimize his sexual performance, or um, I was worried about having ED. And by the way, I don't think I want to talk about ED because ED largely doesn't exist. Um, the, the guy's going to get a pill. But so I'm kind of drifting away, but I'll talk about pills. Where else in medicine, other than psychiatry, do we prescribe pills without data? I mean, Rosalind,
Mm.
if you
Yeah.
told me, if you're a patient of mine, and you told me, "Oh, Dr. Justin, when I go to the gym, my face turns red, my chest pounds. I think I have high blood pressure." And I said,
Yeah.
"Oh, Rosalind, that's interesting. I take this pill and come back in 3 months." You would think, "What the heck is this? Like 1900? Check my blood pressure, get electrocardiogram, check my liver proteins."
Yeah. Yeah.
We expect healthcare to be objective and to be data driven
Yeah.
and ideally personal. But when it
Yeah.
comes to sexual health in men, the situation is even more bizarre for women. But when it comes to sexual health in men, it's uh, take this pill and come back,
Yeah.
in 3 or 6 months. It's like, how's it going? We'll just double the dose. Well, that's ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
Dr. Mohit
Yeah.
Khera, talking about Tom Sawyer. Never met this guy before. I know him now. He's impressive. Dr. Mohit Khera is at Baylor University in the United States, maybe the most famous urologist and andrologist in the United States. Certainly a world renowned figure as well too. He recently said that Viagra is Vicodin. And what do you mean by that? He meant that if you get yeah, if you have pain, you want to know what's causing the pain. If you
Yeah.
take a pain pill, you could
Yeah.
be delaying the time until you figure out what's going on.
Yeah.
And with a smart wearable,
Yeah.
you can now you can identify a problem before it becomes a problem. Like, as I said, it's a leading indicator of cardiovascular
Yeah.
sexual health. But if you have a problem, you can quantify it, and then you
Yeah.
can direct the therapy at
Yeah.
that particular problem in a
Yeah.
quantifiable way. So
Yeah.
men when I prescribe, I don't prescribe these PD5 medications, Viagra and Cialis right now, without telling someone I want your data first,
Yeah.
because even if a guy is taking it who doesn't need it, and that's most men, it's a Hawthorne effect benefit.
Yeah.
These they're men should know that. Men should know actually don't have ED. So ED, here's the myth about ED. This is the biggest discovery
Okay.
with our technology. As men get older,
Yeah.
they report more erectile dysfunction. It goes up 10% per decade. I'm 72. My age 70% of men. The expectation of the academic urologist was that the number of nocturnal erections will come down, their firmness will come down, and the firms of their sex erections will come down as men get older. Now, that's true for the 10 to 12% of men who have significant cardiovascular disease, angina, heart attacks, out of poorly controlled diabetes or hypertension, obesity. But that's not all men. The vast majority of men my age, or men in the 50s, we have mild hypertension, maybe mild pre-diabetic. We're a little bit overweight. I'm not, by the way, but we're a little bit overweight. And that does not have a significant impact upon their sexual performance objectively. So why are these men reporting more erectile dysfunction?
Yeah.
Well, because it's been misdefined. So the definition of erectile dysfunction, according to the International Society for Sexual Medicine, is, watch this. It's incredible. So stupid. Men who can't Erectile dysfunction are men who can't achieve an erection,
Okay.
men who can't maintain an erection. Well,
Yep.
these are two different
Those
groups.
two different things.
A man who can't get up, right, or struggles to get up. These are men who need to see a cardiologist or urologist. You've got significant disease or horrible medication side effects or some other medical problem. But the vast majority of men get an erection and they lose it. So if you're getting blood in, why is it why? You obviously want to try to figure out why is it leaving faster? But erections fading faster with age is normal. Men don't have dysfunction. They have they're getting older. And to draw an
Yeah.
analogy to uh okay, if I would fly to visit you in England and sat on a plane for 9 hours, my rings might get a little tight, especially when I'm back in
Yep.
economy. My rings might get a little bit tight, and my socks I'd have that more my socks would get tight.
Yep.
That didn't happen to me when I was 25 years old.
No.
So why does it happen now? Because the smooth muscles get weaker with age,
Yeah.
that pump the blood back to the heart, and your
Yeah.
venules get stiff with little veins. So, but, I I don't run as fast right now as I did when I was 25 years old. Do I have running dysfunction? Why are we using the word dysfunction when it's not dysfunction? It's a problem. So these men are getting an erection and they lose the erection. Now it could be for lots of reasons. They're cheating on their wives. Their wives cheating on them. They've had too much to drink. They shouldn't have smoked that entire joint. Maybe you shouldn't have been dancing for 2 hours. Or it could be a medication that we doctors prescribe that has a negative impact on your sexual performance, antihypertensives, antidepressants. But once you get blood in, taking a pill puts a little more blood in. But the goal of therapy should be to keep blood in. And the only thing that will keep blood in is a ring. And this is something that men need to understand. If you want to optimize your performance, but if you get an erection, you want to optimize your performance and keep it, whatever the reason, put a ring on it. Women have vibrators,
Hmm.
men don't have anything. But they do have rings. They're not as good as vibrators, but judging subjectively. But back before you were born, Rosalind, when I was dating, say late 70s, early 80s, um, when someone said, let's commercialize vibrators. I mean, vibrators weren't new. There were steam-powered vibrators, excuse me, they were for women's problems, in quotes, in the 19th century. But there were steam-powered vibrators back then, they're like massages. And someone said, oh, well, let's take these large massagers, these are now back in the 1950s, and make them smaller so they can be used more discreetly, less private. My mother's vibrator was one of these enormous things, stuffed away in the bottom dresser drawer, supply closet. Uh, uh, I don't know how many vibrators you put in because there's so many variants of vibrators available for them right now. They've been so commercialized. But back in the late 70s, early 80s, when they started to be commercialized, there was a medical concern that women that they'll be numbing, that they'll be addicting, that it'll be this destruction of the family in Western civilization because women prefer the vibrators to men. Well, they're mainstreamed right now.
Yeah.
Everyone, I mean, I would be hard pressed to find a woman who doesn't own a vibrator in the United
Yeah.
States, who's sexually active. And if you ask a woman, do you have a vibrator? And they're not embarrassed, like roll their eyes and like, are you an idiot? Of course I do. Matter of fact, I have 7 of them, or I get one every year because like a new model, I want a new color. So, when it comes to erection rings, there's still this embarrassment. When we present our device at like the American Urology Association or the International Society of Sexual Medicine, um, we joke that you can tell the difference between a gay doctor and a straight doctor with one question: do you use an erection ring? Because a gay doctor, it's like a woman now. It's like a woman, like, "Hey, like you an idiot? Of course I use an erection ring. Like last night, you got a better one." Whereas a straight doctor, in general, will say, "I don't need that." Well, it's not about need; it's about want. And these doctors are personalizing it. They'll say, "Oh, I don't need that. Maybe some of my patients might need that, but I don't need that." Well, this is male pride, and male pride
Mm.
is an obstacle to 2 things right now. One, men should get their data. This data could tell men about their cardiovascular health, and that's really important. It'll tell men about their sexual health and what men doesn't really want to know about that objectively. Uh, it'll tell men what's the right dose of a pill for you. They'll tell men what's the right dose of testosterone, and testosterone testing should be normal in all men and women. Rosin,
Yeah.
do you know your baseline testosterone? You should, because when years from now, when you're postmenopausal, you're going to want to say, "Hey, here's where I was.
Mm.
Here's when I was at my happiest, if you will. That's where I want to be when I'm 75." Just a personal note, because I like you. Um, and and
Thank
and
you.
and the device will also tell men about the impact of or negative impact of medications for blood pressure or diabetes or depression or anxiety or sleep that they're taking or about alcohol. So getting the data is vital information for someone's health.
Yeah.
But if you want to optimize your performance, put a ring on it, because the ring holds more blood than the penis, and our rings are also designed, research proven, to put the right amount of pressure over the urethra to draw out the ejaculation. So vibrators don't work all that well in men, but by putting a little bit of, you don't want to choke off the urethra, because that produces retroejaculation. It's
Yeah.
painful. But you want to put the right amount of pressure to increase the ejaculatory phase by about 50%. So, and no one has ever thought about this before. And that's so our non-tech tech rings, the performance ring, the maximum performance ring, are designed to do that. And that's an incredible orgasm. Might not be as good as a vibrator, but it's an incredible orgasm. And 4 years ago, if you told me you're going to be on a show talking about research with Rosalind Austin about erection rings, I would have said, that's ridiculous. One, I don't need that, of course, because I'm a straight guy. I don't need that. And two, why? And I realize it it's better to get men should get their data. And what guy doesn't want to optimize his performance?
Well, and I think too, like it's yes, the performance, but I think it's also about that, that personalization, that having your data, having your baseline to then be able to use that data powerfully to help you identify when things are changing as potentially early indicators for other health issues rather than just waiting for something to go
Right.
bang and fighting tooth and nail sometimes depending on where you are in the world in order to get somebody who will attend to that, very it's one of the things. So like some research that I did in the beginning of my PhD is our medical system is set up to assume that if you have symptoms as a human, you will seek care, you will seek help. And the whole medical system is designed around if something is wrong, you'll get help. But the problem is that actually most people will only ask for help when it becomes life or death.
Right.
And by the
We want
time
to.
it
We want.
becomes life and death, it might be too late.
Yeah. We don't have enough. Frankly, when it comes to sexual health, we don't really have any preventive data that we can get other than this ring. Yeah, your
Yeah,
doctor will tell you don't smoke, don't drink to excess, and you want to be in decent cardiovascular health, because it's always embarrassing if after a few thrusts you got to give up and lie on your back. Uh, but the we're all on the road from all men and women too, because we're coming out device for women. We're on the road from fitness to dysfunction, and we
yeah,
would like we don't have a dashboard, so we crash, we break down,
yeah,
and ideally with a wearable, smart wearable, you can see where you are, not go down further down that road, or you can
yeah,
make a U-turn, or you can reverse
yeah,
course, or you can
yeah,
slow down,
yeah,
the process
yeah.
with data.
It's brilliant. I absolutely love it. I can't believe how fast this time has gone. And I just want to pause for a second and just remind everybody, as usual with all of our episodes on Researcher Revealed, if you go into the episode description, you can find a link to FirmTech, which has loads of information as well as the product and the ability to buy the product, but you can dive into the research. And I'll also link in Elliot's LinkedIn pages and a couple of the papers that the researchers he's Tom Sawyered have produced around this technology so that you're able to critically evaluate it and decide for yourself whether or not that this is something you might be interested in. Before before we run away and close this up, Elliot, I was just wondering if you'd be happy just thinking out there. It took a horse accident with a tree, which is quite a dramatic event for you to kind of have this moment of, oh, what about this area of health that hasn't gotten a lot of attention? And then you've kind of gone from there. So, thinking about somebody who might be listening to this, whether they're a doctor like yourself or, potentially an engineer or whoever, why should people be more involved with research and doing stuff with data like that's being gathered?
Because this is the 21st century, and we want healthcare. We want science to be objective. We want to be actionable that way because
Yeah.
it's valuable. Because a lot of science, unfortunately, is just about I call it grant mining. Well, just the government will pay for this, or this nonprofit will pay for this. Not just this research, do grant mining. So we want things to be objective, actionable, but we also want them to be personal. So this type of research that
Mm.
we're doing is so valuable because one mistake that we make in healthcare in general is treat everyone as if they're one size fits all. Everyone gets the same pill for the same problem. We are all an N of one. And with a smart
Yeah.
wearable, it's your data and it's your reaction to whatever the intervention is. It could be device or it could be medication.
Oh, I love that. I love that. That's brilliant. And it's something I feel very, very strongly about it and agree with you that I think this digital revolution, I think governments and policymakers are trying to get a hold of it and being like, oh, it's going to do all these amazing things. But I think the actual power of the digital revolution is you now have that power. You're not reliant on a doctor, a healthcare system. You can get the alert and you can then be like, how are you going to help me with this issue rather than waiting for that tree to run into.
Right. I think
Excellent.
I also
Go
think it's
ahead.
important to live. I think it's important to live a little bit dangerously because
Okay.
that's stimulating to the mind. And if I hadn't crashed into that tree, or if I hadn't been willing to take the plunge, if you will, with this and put significant personal money at risk, that would then it wouldn't happen. So I think people should live a little bit. People should plan for pleasure, live a little bit dangerously, and think about data.
Ooh, I like that. Plan for pleasure, live dangerously, get that data. I love it. That's brilliant. Right. Thank you very, very much, Elliot, for your time and for joining me on Researcher Revealed. And for everybody else out there, keep tuned. And the next episode will hopefully be dropping in about 3 weeks' time. Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks so much.